You are standing in a completely ordinary moment, maybe reaching for a cup, hearing a friend laugh, or turning into a hallway you have never seen before. That ordinary setup matters because déjà vu usually begins inside normal life. Then the moment tilts. For one strange second, your brain announces that this exact scene has already happened, even though you know it has not. The shock comes from how quickly the feeling becomes certain. That is déjà vu, the eerie feeling that a new experience is familiar, paired with the equally strong knowledge that the familiarity does not make sense. It is a contradiction you can feel before you can explain. The experience can feel mystical because it arrives with confidence. It does not whisper maybe. It feels like a tiny stamp of certainty landing on the present. That confidence is the hook that makes the experience unforgettable. But déjà vu is not good evidence that you saw the future, entered a time loop, or uncovered a secret memory from another life. The science is quieter, but much more useful. It is more interesting than that. Déjà vu seems to reveal how your brain decides what counts as familiar before it can explain why. The mystery is hidden in the timing of recognition. To understand it, imagine memory not as a camera but as a busy workshop that rebuilds the past whenever you need it. Every remembered moment is assembled, not simply replayed. In that workshop, one system asks whether something feels known. Another system searches for details, like where it happened, when it happened, and what came next. Those two jobs can separate for a second. Most of the time, those systems agree. Familiarity arrives with a matching memory, and your mind quietly files the moment as something you recognize. Agreement feels so smooth that you rarely notice it happening. Déjà vu begins when those systems disagree. A scene feels familiar, but the brain cannot find the actual memory that should belong to that feeling. Disagreement, however, becomes impossible to ignore. This mismatch is why the sensation is so specific. It is not simply remembering, it is familiarity without a usable source. It is a feeling searching for a missing address. That sourceless familiarity creates a mental double exposure. One layer says this is new, while another layer glows as if it has been here before. Both layers feel real, but only one has evidence. Researchers often describe déjà vu as a conflict between novelty and familiarity. Your brain is not only making an error, it is noticing that the error feels wrong. That self-checking quality is what makes déjà vu so fascinating. That may be why déjà vu can feel so vivid and so brief. The mind raises a small alarm, checks the scene, and the illusion collapses. The alarm is small, but it reaches awareness. The memory machinery involved sits partly in the temporal lobes, regions on the sides of the brain that help handle memory, meaning, emotion, and recognition. These regions are not magic boxes but networks of communication. Deep inside that system, the hippocampus helps bind a moment together. The place, the sound, the body feeling, and the order of events. A memory needs binding before it can feel like an event. Nearby familiarity networks help answer a faster question. Have I encountered something like this before, even if I cannot retrieve the full story? Fast recognition can be helpful even when details are absent. Those fast familiarity signals are useful. They help you recognize a face, navigate a room, or sense that a pattern has appeared before. Without shortcuts, everyday recognition would feel painfully slow. But a useful shortcut can misfire. If the familiarity signal lights up at the wrong time, a brand new moment can arrive wearing an old badge. The badge is convincing, even when the file is empty. One possible explanation is split perception. Your brain may process part of a scene weakly, with little attention, and then process it clearly a moment later. Attention changes the strength of the first trace. The second pass feels strangely familiar because, in a tiny technical sense, the brain has already touched the scene once before. The brain can mistake that trace for a tiny earlier visit. Imagine glancing at a doorway while distracted, then looking back half a second later. The first glance leaves a faint trace. The second glance feels like a repeat. The example is simple, but the sensation can feel enormous. This does not explain every case, but it shows how small timing differences can turn ordinary perception into a feeling of impossible repetition. Milliseconds can matter when perception is being stitched together. Another clue comes from similarity. A new place can share a hidden shape with an old place. The same corner, the same path, the same arrangement of objects. Similarity is powerful because the brain loves reusable patterns. You may not consciously remember the old layout, but your brain notices the pattern and sends up a familiarity signal without the original context. The result is familiar shape without familiar story. In that version, déjà vu is like walking through a new room while an old floor plan briefly slides underneath it. The overlap is invisible to you, but not to recognition. This is why the feeling often attaches to places, conversations, and ordinary scenes rather than dramatic events. Pattern matching works best on structure. The scene is ordinary, yet its structure rings a bell. A third idea focuses on expectation. Your brain constantly predicts what should happen next, comparing the present with models built from past experience. Prediction helps the brain stay ahead of the world. When a new moment fits an old expectation too neatly, the brain may briefly treat prediction as recognition, as if guessing correctly means remembering. A good prediction can briefly masquerade as an old memory. Then another part of the mind pushes back. Wait, this is not actually a memory. That pushback may be the heart of the déjà vu feeling. That tiny correction may be the moment you notice. This conflict account makes déjà vu less like a broken machine and more like a quality control signal inside memory itself. A checking system is not failure, it is protection. The brain is saying, something about this feels familiar, but the evidence does not line up. That contradiction is what reaches consciousness. The contradiction becomes the experience itself. That also explains why the feeling is hard to hold on to. Once you inspect the moment, the false familiarity has nothing solid to attach to. Without evidence, the feeling cannot stay stable. Try to chase déjà vu and it usually fades, like a soap bubble popping the second you point directly at it. The more directly you inspect it, the faster it disappears. The experience is common. Many people have felt it at least once, and occasional déjà vu is usually treated as a normal feature of human memory. That commonness is one reason scientists treat it seriously. It also tends to be reported more often by younger adults than older adults, which may connect to how memory checking and conflict monitoring change over life. Age patterns suggest déjà vu is tied to active monitoring systems. Travel, tiredness, stress, and busy attention may make the feeling easier to notice, because they place more strain on perception and memory. Strain does not create proof, it changes the conditions for mistakes. Picture the brain as a switchboard at the end of a long day. Most wires still connect correctly, but one glowing signal may briefly arrive in the wrong lane. The wrong lane is usually corrected before anything else happens. That does not mean the whole system is broken. In a healthy brain, the mistake is usually tiny, temporary, and self-correcting. A tiny root error can still feel dramatic from inside. In fact, the weirdness of déjà vu may be a sign that your brain is checking its own work, comparing a feeling against the facts of the moment. This is memory acting like its own fact-checker. But there is an important medical footnote. Déjà vu can also appear as part of temporal lobe seizures, especially when it is frequent, intense, or linked with other symptoms. That possibility is rare, but it deserves respect. Temporal lobe seizures do not always look dramatic from the outside. Sometimes they begin as an aura, a sudden feeling, memory flash, fear, smell, or wave of familiarity. The inner sensation can be the first visible part of the event. That is why context matters. A rare brief episode during normal life is different from repeated episodes with confusion, loss of awareness, headaches, shaking, or other changes. The pattern around the feeling tells you how seriously to take it. If déjà vu becomes persistent, distressing, unusually frequent, or arrives with symptoms that worry you, it is worth talking with a healthcare professional. Medical context matters more than the weird feeling alone. For most people, though, déjà vu is not a warning sign. It is a short glimpse into the backstage machinery of recognition. The backstage view is strange, but usually harmless. It shows that memory is not one thing. There is the feeling of knowing, the evidence for knowing, and the story your mind builds to connect them. Those pieces can agree, disagree, or arrive out of order. Usually those pieces snap together so smoothly that you never notice them. Déjà vu is what happens when the snap is slightly out of sync. A tiny delay is enough to make the present feel duplicated. This is also why the confidence feels so strange. Confidence is a mental signal too, and it can arrive before the proof is caught up. Confidence is not the same thing as accuracy. A memory can feel strong without being accurate. A moment can feel familiar without being old. The brain often decides before it can fully explain. That distinction is useful far beyond déjà vu. Déjà vu turns that hidden decision into a visible crack, a brief gap between the feeling of truth and the evidence for truth. For a second, the mind shows its own uncertainty. And once you see that gap, ordinary memory becomes more mysterious. Every remembered scene is not a file pulled from storage, but a reconstruction happening now. Reconstruction is fast enough to feel like direct access. Your brain is constantly blending perception, expectation, emotion, and fragments of the past into a single convincing present. The present is a collaboration, not a raw recording. Most of the time, that present feels seamless. Déjà vu is the moment the seam catches the light. A seamless mind is still built from moving parts. So the next time a room, a sentence, or a quiet second feels impossibly familiar, you do not have to treat it as a message from time. The better explanation is inside recognition, not outside time. You can treat it as something stranger and more human. Your memory system briefly disagreeing with itself, then letting you watch the disagreement happen. And then, the signals settle, leaving only the memory of the weirdness.